Alice went to the hospital alone for a pregnancy checkup but was shocked to find her bank account empty when trying to pay. Panic set in as she realized this was the money she had painstakingly saved by delivering food. She quickly called her aunt, only to learn that her uncle had gambled away all her savings. Her aunt responded coldly, "We've raised you all these years. What's wrong with spending a little of your money?" 8 months earlier, Alice, from a humble background, had been tirelessly delivering food to save up for her college tuition. One day, she delivered to a lavish banquet, only to be humiliated and shoved by snobbish socialites. Just as she was about to fall, Luis caught her and ordered his staff to throw out the arrogant heiresses. Despite the crisis being resolved, Alice couldn't find the customer who had placed the order. Luis, surrounded by beautiful women, looked disinterested, making his younger brother Jason anxious. Jason quietly urged, "Bro, take this seriously. Isn't there anyone you want to marry?" To stop their mother's constant nagging about marriage, Jason secretly had Luis drugged. Coincidentally, Jason noticed that Alice's delivery order mentioned their mother sending medicine to Luis. He mistakenly thought Alice was the woman their mother had arranged for Luis. Acting on this assumption, he sent the clueless Alice into Luis's room. The room was filled with a seductive scent. Under the drug's influence, Luis overpowered Alice. The next morning, Luis coldly questioned her, "How much did my mother promise you?" Alice tearfully explained, "I'm just a food delivery girl, not here to sell myself." Luis scoffed and tossed a string of prayer beads at her, sneering, "Take this and ask her for money." Jason later handed Alice some money and left without a word. Alice didn't want to accept the humiliating payment, but after receiving a call from her friend reminding her that it was the last day to pay her tuition, she reluctantly took the money. She knew that getting into college was her only chance to change her fate. Later, Alice's uncle and aunt showed up at her school. They had never intended to pay her tuition and planned to marry her off for a dowry. But upon discovering Alice was pregnant, her furious uncle slapped her hard, accusing her of ruining their plan to sell her for a good price. Losing control, he struck her again and demanded she get an abortion. Alice firmly refused, prompting the cruel couple to sneer, "We won't help you. Don't expect another penny from us." Alice later fainted in the hospital restroom, where doctors and nurses found her. Jason noticed the prayer beads on her wrist and immediately recognized her. He urgently informed Luis, "Come to the hospital now. Your child is about to be born." Luis coldly replied, "I'll wait for the DNA results. I don't trust a woman who climbs into bed so easily." Upon hearing the news, their mother rushed to go to the hospital, but Luis sneered, "She took your money and secretly got pregnant? She did this on purpose." His mother, confused, said, "When did I arrange any woman? I only sent a delivery person with medicine. I didn't even know if it was a man or a woman." Luis froze, realizing he had completely misunderstood Alice. After Alice regained consciousness, the doctor informed her that the baby was safe, but she needed to take extra care of her health. Suddenly, her uncle and aunt stormed into the hospital room, aggressively questioning the doctor, "Who told you to save her? That baby should have been aborted." They violently grabbed Alice, shouting, "As long as she gives birth to a stillborn, the old man in the village will marry her." Alice struggled desperately, but just in time, Luis arrived and shielded her with his arms. Choking back tears, Alice said, "I wasn't selling myself that day." Luis leaned down and softly apologized, sincerely promising, "I will take care of you and the baby." His bodyguards forcefully pinned her uncle to the ground and restrained the still screaming aunt. The pair shouted, "We raised her, so we have the right to control her marriage. She's already been sold to that old man in the village." Alice, trembling, told Luis, "They took my parents' house and savings, got custody of me, but never gave me a single cent." Luis's expression turned ice cold as he held Alice tightly and ordered his bodyguards, "Give them a proper lesson." Luis brought Alice back to his mansion. His mother took a strong liking to Alice, personally buying her luxurious clothes and promising to care for her and the baby. That night, Alice learned she would be sharing a room with Luis and grew anxious. However, Luis gave her a gentle smile and reassured her, "You're pregnant now, I won't touch you." "You sleep in the bed, I'll take the couch." Alice began to develop feelings for Luis, but tried to suppress them. She knew that a man of Luis's status would never truly fall for someone like her. She believed that once the baby was born, it would be time for her to leave. Later, Alice attended a class reunion, only to find Bess maliciously spreading rumors that she had married a 50-year-old man for money. The others mocked Alice for wearing fake designer clothes, with only her best friend Lulu standing up for her. Surrounded by ridicule, Alice calmly responded, "If I'm not welcome here, I'll leave on my own." It was raining outside, and Alice thought about her expensive shoes, which couldn't get wet, so she took them off and carried them. Just then, a luxury car stopped at the entrance. Bess's cronies excitedly thought it was Bess's wealthy boyfriend, rushing forward to greet him. But to their shock, it was Luis who stepped out. Seeing Alice barefoot, Luis didn't hesitate. He gently picked her up and softly said, "Shoes are meant to be worn, not to be cherished." Determined to make things official, Luis decided to host a grand banquet to formally introduce Alice as his wife to the elite families. However, Alice was unaware of his true intentions. She mistakenly believed Luis was holding this lavish event to marry another noblewoman, and that she was merely a tool to bear his child. At the banquet, Bess attended for the first time with her wealthy boyfriend. When she saw Alice, visibly pregnant, appearing at the event, Bess sneered and assumed Alice was a housemaid. Bess publicly mocked, "She's just some tramp who dropped out of school to have a baby for an old man." Then, she deliberately splashed wine on Alice. The guests at the banquet, unaware of the truth, quickly believed Bess's malicious rumors. The room filled with mocking laughter and harsh accusations. Alice, overwhelmed by the insults, stood frozen, her face full of grievance. Luis soon arrived at the scene, and when he saw Alice being bullied, his eyes burned with both heartbreak and fury. Bess's wealthy boyfriend immediately recognized Luis's powerful identity and dropped to his knees in fear, begging for forgiveness. Realizing the magnitude of her mistake, Bess panicked and also knelt, frantically apologizing. But Luis was merciless. His cold voice cut through the noise as he ordered, "Throw her out." From that moment, Bess became infamous throughout the city, shunned and ridiculed by everyone. Those who had joined Bess in humiliating Alice were also kicked out of the banquet. Then, Luis solemnly declared, "Alice is my wife." Yet, Alice's heart sank when she saw Luis speaking intimately with another woman. Already feeling insecure, she realized how out of place she seemed in this extravagant world. Trying to regain her composure, Alice fixed her makeup and planned to blend in. When Luis tried to escort her downstairs, Alice instinctively avoided his hand. Moments later, Alice was stunned to see the woman Luis had been talking to standing nearby, wearing a dress strikingly similar to hers. Whispers of mockery spread through the crowd. A bold guest sneered, "Is she trying to copy Cora?" Just as Alice was about to explain herself, the woman, Cora, suddenly stepped forward and slapped the gossiping guests without hesitation. It turned out that the woman was Luis's older sister, Cora. Seeing Alice's awkwardness, Cora chuckled softly and gently comforted her. From their first meeting, Cora genuinely liked Alice. Realizing Alice had misunderstood his relationship with Cora, Luis understood why she had been distant. To ease her worries, Luis knelt on one knee, took out a diamond ring, and solemnly announced to everyone, "Alice is my one and only wife." This entire banquet was held in her honor. Meanwhile, outside the banquet, Bess was being brutally beaten. Her so-called wealthy boyfriend turned out to be a married man, now caught and assaulted by his furious wife. Disgraced and humiliated, Bess burned with hatred, blaming Alice for everything and vowing to destroy her. Later that night, Luis emerged from his bath and saw his lovely wife. Unable to resist, he pulled Alice into his arms. They shared a tender moment, but Luis restrained his desires and gently urged Alice to sleep while he went to rest in his study. The next day, Alice carefully prepared a lunchbox and brought it to Luis's office, only to walk in on Bess attempting to seduce Luis. Consumed by pain and anger, Alice's emotions spiraled out of control, triggering premature labor. After the baby was born, Alice grew distant, her eyes cold and detached when she looked at Luis. Misunderstanding her silence as falling out of love, Luis chose to give her freedom, believing he shouldn't hold her back. Not long after, Alice's aunt lied, claiming she had terminal cancer with only a month to live, tricking Alice into returning home. Trusting her, Alice went back, only to discover it was a trap. Her cruel aunt and uncle had sold her to an old man named Mr. Xia, and Alice nearly became his victim. In the critical moment, Luis, sensing Alice's disappearance, desperately searched for her. He arrived just in time to rescue her from danger. Luis gently comforted Alice, softly soothing her emotions. Then, with a chilling tone, he ordered his men to ruthlessly deal with Mr. Xia, ensuring he would be completely crippled. Alice, feeling Luis's genuine care, finally gathered the courage to ask about his relationship with Bess. Luis let out a helpless yet indulgent smile and was just about to explain when Cora dragged a disheveled Bess in front of Alice. Under Cora's sharp interrogation, Bess finally confessed that Luis had never accepted her advances on the day Alice went into premature labor. Hearing the truth, the knot in Alice's heart was untied, and her relationship with Luis was fully restored. Not long after, Luis took Alice to an abandoned building on the outskirts of the city. He handed over the power of judgment to his wife. Facing her uncle and aunt, who were now kneeling and begging for mercy, Alice remained cold and emotionless. She already knew their claim of cancer was nothing but a lie. Alice's voice was icy. "Only one of you will walk out alive today." In an instant, driven by fear, her uncle viciously attacked her aunt, beating and kicking her without hesitation. In the end, he mercilessly stabbed her with a knife. Watching them turn on each other, Alice felt no satisfaction. Luis gently took Alice's hand and led her away, returning to the mansion. Luis's mother looked at Alice with warmth and affection, softly saying, "You're part of our family now. No one will dare to hurt you again." At that moment, Cora approached, cradling the crying baby. With a playful grin, she handed the child to Luis and teased, "Come on, hurry up and comfort your son." Luis carefully took the baby into his arms, gently playing with the little one. Watching this heartwarming scene, Alice felt a warmth and happiness she had never known before.